I was an orphan taken in by the Wilson family. The elders of the Wilson family told me to marry into their family, to let Lily Wilson be my wife, and that any child born must carry the Wilson surname. I loved Lily Wilson deeply, not to mention, her parents had raised me. So I agreed without hesitation and married her. However, after the marriage, Lily never got pregnant. My mother-in-law was furious. She not only forbade me from drinking alcohol and eating meat but also wouldn't let me stay up late playing games. Even with all that, she still didn't get what she wanted. Confused and frustrated, she made me drink wolfberry tea, eat ginseng, and even forced me to kneel before the Buddha daily. What she didn't know was that in all those years of marriage, Lily Wilson never once let me even touch her hand. Later, when I was lying in a hospital bed, completely drained, Shemmy's wife never came to see me one last time. Instead, Michael Evans kindly informed me that he and Lily were preparing for their wedding and didn't have time to visit. Only then did I realize that Lily had already built a new life for herself while I had been left all alone. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in time, back in the Wilson household. Lily's mother, still joking, asked, "James Carter, do you like our Lily?" I replied, "No, I don't like her anymore. In this life, I want to do what I truly love." The scent of hospital disinfectant still lingered in my nose, the pain still clung to my chest. Lily's former mother-in-law was asking again, "James Carter, do you like our Lily Wilson? After graduation, can we let Yen Yen be your wife?" The living room was filled with Wilson family friends and my own parents. The women seemed so kind, gentle, and loving, nothing like the harsh, manipulative people I remembered from my previous life. Because Lily and I had been apart for so long, she never had a chance to get pregnant. She found ways to make my life miserable, restricting my diet, forbidding alcohol and meat, forcing Chinese herbal medicine down my throat daily, and even making me pray to the gods. That wasn't the worst part, the daily humiliation was unbearable. She constantly questioned my manhood and worth, once pushing me so hard I nearly hit her. She broke into tears and accused me of being ungrateful, saying she raised me like her own son and gave her daughter to me as an act of immense kindness, and yet I repaid her with cruelty. That guilt was my Achilles heel, so I never lifted a hand against her. My thoughts drifted until she nudged me again and said, "James Carter, don't just stand there. Say what's on your mind." Snapping out of it, I looked into the woman's eyes and saw that same eagerness, not love, but a desire to tie me to Lily for the sake of my inheritance. If I had paid closer attention in my past life, I would have realized it sooner. They weren't desperate to see Lily and me married out of affection, they wanted to secure my assets. At the time, I was just a spoiled rich kid who had just lost both parents. I thought I'd found warmth and family in the Wilsons. How could I have known the truth? Now, after over 30 years of a marriage in name only, and after watching Lily's mother shed her mask, I saw everything clearly. So I stood up, smiled, and said, "Auntie, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I've always seen Lily as a sister. And after high school, I'm planning to take the college entrance exam." Lily's mother's face turned pale. She had asked me that question in front of everyone today to pressure me into confirming the marriage so she wouldn't be blamed for pushing me to transfer my assets. Still, she recovered quickly, stood up, took my hand naturally, and told the guests, "This boy is just too shy." Later, Lily walked with me in the garden. She was sitting on the sofa across from Mayoung, beautiful, a little aloof. She wore a light beige polka-dot dress, the hem brushing her calves, a ribbon tied around her slim waist. Her father had been good friends with my parents, so Lily and I were technically childhood sweethearts. I had liked being around her since we were little, and we had gotten along well. But as we grew older, she became distant. I didn't understand at the time. I thought she was just maturing, being cautious around the opposite sex. In truth, she had grown tired of me. I was a spoiled, hot-tempered rich kid who always got his way, and she was forced to obey her parents, to follow whatever I said. I didn't truly love her, and she couldn't escape me. Of course she was frustrated. If she had simply ignored me, it would have been fine. But she married Myatt, never let me touch her, and then cheated on me. I hated her for it, but I hated myself even more. I let emotions blind me and ended up living such a miserable life. I clenched my fists and slowly loosened them, gently pried Lily's mother's hands away, and smiled, saying, "Sister, you don't need to walk me out. You still need to see Michael Evans later. If you like him, bring him home sooner." One of the guests chuckled, "So Lily has someone she likes, yet her mother's still trying to match her with you." I finally turned to look at Lily. Her expression was worse than her mother's, her eyes slightly red at the corners. I didn't bother looking further. I said goodbye to everyone and left on my own. I stepped out of the living room and went straight to the mailbox in the front yard. After sifting through the letters, I finally found the one addressed to me, James Carter. That's when Lily's voice called from behind. I turned and quickly tucked the letter out of sight. She asked, "Why did you say that today?" I frowned. "Say what?" She replied, "You just confessed to me yesterday, and now you say I'm like a sister to you. Are you playing games? My mom treats you like her own son, and you embarrassed her in public." I stared at her in silence, remembering how many times her mother had humiliated me in front of others after we got married in my previous life. If I ever showed a hint of dissatisfaction, would immediately draw Lily Wilson's resentment. She snapped, "Isn't my mother good enough to you? She's an elder, what's wrong with her saying a few things?" I smiled and replied, "Auntie treats me like her own son. If her own son is a little rebellious, what's the harm in saying a few things to him?" Lily bit her lip and fell silent. After a while, she looked at me with confusion and said, "You're acting really weird." Of course I seemed strange to her. In my previous life, after my parents died, I genuinely treated the Wilson family as my own. I buried my arrogance, tolerated everything her mother threw at me, and even tiptoed around Lily herself to please her. But this time, I sneered and said, "So what are you mad about? Didn't you hate me chasing you? Now I say I don't like you, just like you wanted." With that, I turned to leave and was about to open the letter in my hand when Lily suddenly said, "I don't." I answered coldly, "That's not important." And truly, it wasn't. Whether Lily Wilson loved me or not no longer mattered. She frowned and said, "Saying sweet things doesn't mean anything, James Carter. You're still so hard to get along with." In this new life, with my parents gone and no one else to rely on, Lily Wilson's attitude had shifted. She used to speak cautiously, but now she dared say to my face that I was difficult. Was I really hard to deal with? No, I just didn't let her manipulate me. Her so-called sweet words were just attempts to pacify me and get me to agree to an engagement. In my past life, right after the engagement, the Wilson family had me hand over most of my assets under the excuse that their company needed expansion funds. Back then, the private sector was booming, and opportunities to make a fortune were everywhere. With my help, the Wilson family took over real estate and the non-staple food market across the entire Acropolis, eventually becoming the richest family in the region. People envied me, thinking I had married into wealth, but they didn't know that without me James Carter the Wilsons would have never reached that height. In this life, I stood from a higher vantage point and watched the clowns in the Wilson family dance, revel, and ultimately destroy themselves. I didn't bother to explain anything. I smiled and said, "Sure, I'm difficult. So what? Don't hold back your complaints." Then I went back inside and eagerly opened the letter. To my surprise, I had an Uncle Emmy mother's half-brother living abroad in country F. I had met him once years ago when he came asking for help with his mother's medical treatment. My parents helped generously, even finding a good hospital. After that, our families visited occasionally, but we lost touch over the years. In my past life, I never knew that he had gone overseas to seek fortune and had accidentally become rich. A year after my parents died in a car crash, he found out I'd been taken in by the Wilsons and started writing to me. The letter was originally sent to my childhood home and eventually redirected to the Wilsons. Lily's mother had known about it the whole time, but she kept it from me. I didn't find out until many years later that my uncle had been sending both money and letters. By then, it was too late. This letter told me he couldn't return to China, so he chose to stay in touch by mail. It was the 10th letter he had written, each one sharing his life abroad, offering comfort, and asking if I wanted to come to Country F. Included were 10 bills of foreign currency and a plane ticket. My eyes stung. I wasn't an orphan after all. I still had family. The departure was from nearby Shanghai, scheduled 4 days later. I pulled myself together. First, I had to settle the inheritance from my parents. The properties weren't going anywhere, they were in good locations and would only increase in value. I decided to split the money, half to take abroad, half left in the bank. Since I didn't know my uncle very well, I had to be cautious before making contact with his family. Luckily, the college entrance exams were over. Using the excuse of visiting classmates, I went out and handled things quietly. At the bank, I ran into a few classmates who greeted me enthusiastically. We were just looking for you, let's go, we're having a class reunion. The venue was the biggest KTV in the city. Back then, karaoke was still a trendy thing to do. When I arrived, I saw that Lily Wilson was also there. One of the girls joked, "Why isn't James Carter here yet?" Then she looked at Lily and teased, "Where's your husband?" Lily frowned and grumbled, "He's so annoying. Besides, I don't like James Carter, I won't marry him." Laughter erupted around the room. Another friend asked, "So who do you like?" "Our class monitor." The others joined in, playfully pushing Lily toward Michael Evans. The guys standing nearby looked awkward and coughed. The lights flashed, and the room suddenly quieted as everyone noticed me walking in. I smiled and said, "Wow, such a party, go on, don't mind me." Lily instinctively stepped closer to Michael Evans and frowned. "James Carter, what kind of stunt are you pulling now?" "Stunt?" I wanted to stab both of them then and there. But nothing had happened yet, and even if I told anyone how much they hurt me in the past life, no one would believe it. I forced a smile and said, "Lily Wilson, if I'm so annoying, why did you always accept gifts from me? You're annoyed, but you never said no to the presents. You're such a fake." Without waiting for a reply, I clapped and added, "Well, if I'm not welcome, I'll get going." Before anyone could react, I turned and pushed the door open. Lily ran after me, shouting, "James Carter, listen to me." But behind us came a loud commotion. Someone yelled, "Michael Evans fainted." Lily immediately abandoned me and ran toward him, shouting, "James Carter, I was just angry earlier, I'll explain everything later, okay?" She didn't even finish her sentence before rushing to Michael's side. I looked at her coldly, then turned away and walked off without hesitation. There would be no chance to explain. In 3 days, I would be flying to Country F. From now on, I would never think about Lily Wilson again, and she didn't need to think about me either. The next day, I cleaned out my room and threw away anything that needed to go. Lily's mother came by and casually asked which university I had applied to. Of course, I wasn't about to tell her I was going abroad, so I casually mentioned Shanghai City University to throw her off. While praising Shanghai City University, she rolled her eyes and brought up my engagement to Lily again. She said we could get engaged first so that it wouldn't delay either of us from going to college. Before I could refuse, she changed the subject and tried to reassure me, saying, "I've talked to Lily. She and Michael Evans are just ordinary classmates. You're overthinking it." I was speechless. She still wouldn't give up. I took a step back and replied, "Auntie, I really have no interest in Lily Wilson." But she wouldn't let it go and quickly promised, "Good child, I'll make sure Lily and that classmate cut ties completely." Lily happened to overhear this part. Misunderstanding the situation, she walked toward me with a look of disappointment and disgust in her eyes. She burst out, "Young master, you always need everything to revolve around you. Michael Evans is weak and comes from a poor family. I took care of him out of kindness, but you made sure the whole world knew and even ran to tell my mother." She yanked the bracelet off her wrist in frustration, the beads hit the floor with a crackling sound and scattered in every direction. She said bitterly, "I wanted to give you a proper apology, but I guess it's not needed anymore. Let me be clear, there's nothing going on between Michael Evans and me, and I won't distance myself from him because of you. After her outburst, she stormed over to the trash bin by the door, the one I'd just used, and kicked it hard. It toppled over with a loud thud. Out spilled handmade dolls, the scarf she had knitted for me, paper cranes, and little stars she had folded herself. Her eyes suddenly reddened. She bit her lip and whispered, "These were all gifts I gave you." I frowned and replied, "Well, if you don't like them, just throw them away." As I spoke, I kicked the stray beads near my feet out of the way. I didn't have time for sentiment. I had a plane to catch in 2 days. The distance from Acropolis to Shanghai wasn't short, so I had to leave early. I had already gotten my passport back when I traveled abroad previously. I didn't have much with me. All my valuables, documents, and property deeds were secured in the bank. Coincidentally, Lily's parents had gone to another city for business, so I didn't say goodbye in person. Sure, they had taken care of me for years, but it was only for the inheritance. The money my uncle sent me was embezzled by Lily's mother, and it had covered all of my living expenses anyway. As I dragged my suitcase downstairs, I ran into Lily and Michael Evans in the living room. They had just returned from outside. Lily noticed the luggage and asked, "Where are you going?" "Running off to tattle on me and my brother Michael again." I motioned for them to move aside and said, "I'm going to a classmate's house for a few days." "Your mom knows." I didn't lie. I had, in fact, told Lily's mother that I'd be visiting a friend. Still feeling slighted, Lily sneered, "Go and come back by yourself. Don't have the driver pick you up." "That's my driver, not yours." I responded calmly, "It's fine." Michael Evans, who had been ignored up to that point, suddenly spoke up in a humbled tone, "Classmate James Carter, I've been kicked out of my home and have nowhere else to go. Lily let me stay with her out of kindness. I heard from Auntie that you and Lily's sister had a falling out because of me. I'm really sorry." Lily snorted, "No need to apologize to him." Clinging to Michael's arm, she said, "If he hadn't made such a fuss, my mom wouldn't have gotten involved. Seriously, men and women in love, it's so boring." She strode ahead on her own. Behind her, Michael Evans said timidly, "Lily, maybe you should try talking to James Carter." But Lily snapped, "Don't worry about him. He's just an orphan with no home to return to. He'll come crawling back eventually." Her voice was cold, laced with disdain. I paused for a second, then kept walking. So that's what they really thought, that I had nowhere to go. Fine. One day, I'd show them what it feels like to be the one left with nothing. That first day, Lily didn't feel anything when I left. On the second day, she asked the servant impatiently, "Has James Carter come back yet?" The servant shook his head. Her brows creased as she grumbled, "I hate him the most. Who does he think he is? Acting like some rich prince." Then she asked again, "Which classmate's house did he go to?" Again, the servant shook his head. Lily felt even more irritated, like a weight was pressing on her chest, suffocating her. Passing by my room, she noticed something glinting near the large potted plant by the door. Curious, she bent down to pick it. It was one of the beads from the bracelet. She stared at it, dazed. Then she squatted down and, without knowing why, started searching for the other beads. A sense of regret rose in her heart. Why had she torn the bracelet apart? That had been her graduation gift to me, something she'd planned and prepared for a long time. She knew I liked fidgeting with small objects to soothe my nerves, especially after losing my parents. She had always known I could be arrogant and difficult, but she'd also seen how I changed after my parents died. Then why had she treated me so carelessly? She thought, maybe when James Carter comes back, I'll apologize sincerely. But one day passed, then another, then a third, still no sign of me. Her unease grew. She started calling classmates who were close to me, but none of them had seen me. Refusing to believe it, she began searching for me in person, but I was already gone. Until she opened the door to my bedroom, Lily Wilson hadn't fully realized I was gone. The room, once warmly decorated, now felt hollow. The dolls she had gifted me since childhood, ones she loved most, were gone. My clothes, my shoes, everything that once marked my presence had disappeared. She searched the room frantically, looking for any trace of my life there, but all she found was a piece of letter paper pressed under a book on the table. It read, "I'm leaving, Uncle and Aunt, don't miss me." Just 9 words, no punctuation, and not a single one was meant for her. After my plane landed in Country F, I didn't contact my uncle right away. Instead, I hired a private investigator to look into his family's situation. I didn't need anything deep, just the basics. Was the household stable? Were the people decent? No family already in chaos would welcome a long-lost relative. Fortunately, the results were promising. My uncle owned a large farm in a particular state, had a solid reputation, and his family was simple and harmonious. I also prepared for the worst. If my uncle turned out to be unreliable, I could survive just fine on my own while studying in Country F. After wrapping up the investigation and buying gifts, I reached out. When he learned I had arrived, he came to pick me up immediately. 3 days later, I stepped onto his farm. My uncle, more than a decade older than my mother, had been weathered by years of hard labor and sun. He wasn't much of a talker, especially around me. All he said was, "Seeing you reminds me of my sister," then handed me a bank card, told me to spend freely, took me horseback riding, and let me mess with the big dog he raised, who clearly had no say in the matter. My aunt was a warm-hearted, slightly plump white woman who made desserts with too much sugar, though her enthusiasm made up for it. My cousin, my uncle's daughter, was married to a Chinese-American man. Thanks to them, I could still enjoy some Chinese food. My uncle's son, only a year older than me, saw through my reserved nature and clapped me on the shoulder, saying, "Dude, you're tall, get some confidence. Clean up a bit and you could date anyone." He started dragging me to local parties and youth events. With his help, I integrated into the community fast. After summer break, college began. Through my uncle's connections, I entered the same university as my cousin, majoring in finance not because I had a passion for it, but because my past life experience and current capital gave me confidence in building a career. Life in Country F was warmer than I imagined. During holidays, I worked on the farm and enjoyed leisure. During the semester, I studied and collaborated with classmates from around the world. By my sophomore year, after thorough research, I decided to dive into import-export. When I talked to my uncle, he didn't reject the idea. Instead, he asked whether I had enough funding and offered to introduce me to a few business owners who could mentor me. While guidance was nice, I wasn't afraid to take some wrong turns. I was still young, had time, money, and plenty of room for trial and error. So, with 3 classmates, I invested in a small export business, selling clothing and food to neighboring countries. A year later, during my junior year, we turned a small profit. But disagreements arose. One classmate wanted to start his own business, another bailed because the income was too unstable. Eventually, we disbanded. Still, the experience taught me a lot, especially that owning the source factory for imports and exports would bring greater profit. I researched again and drafted plans for a new company. With money earned from the first venture, I bought my uncle a car and an apartment for myself near campus, where I lived with my cousin. We adopted several stray cats, some disabled, some healthy, and I welcomed them all. When sunlight spilled onto the balcony, the cats would nap at my feet. I'd pet one, tease another, and find my thoughts drifting back to the past. I remembered the first wedding anniversary with Lily Wilson. We both loved cats, and she once said we'd raise one together. I brought home a little Siamese kitten as a surprise, but her parents disapproved. They insisted Lily had to focus on preparing for pregnancy and that cats were bad for expectant mothers. That poor kitten didn't know what it had done wrong, curling up in my arms with confused eyes. I had no choice but to give it to a classmate who also loved cats. I gave him money and supplies and made regular visits to see the little guy. Thinking about it now, I reached for a long-haired orange cat and realized how little I thought about my past life anymore or the Wilson family. I was happy now. There was no need to dwell on dirty memories. In the second semester of junior year, I launched a new company focused on the dairy industry, raising cows, producing dairy, and gradually building a full industrial chain. By graduation, everything was in place. With production costs lowered, I was confident negotiating in both domestic and foreign markets. Once things stabilized, I proposed a visit back to China. My uncle didn't object, so my cousin and I returned together. The moment we landed, someone covered my eyes. James Carter, guess who? I was speechless. That voice belonged to Anna, a beautiful Hispanic woman who had been my business partner since college. Surprised, she grinned. I said flatly, "Didn't you say you were staying to handle the land negotiation? If you're here, who's handling it?" Her big, clear eyes sparkled. "So I'm not as important as the company to you?" I replied without missing a beat, obviously. "Don't act pitiful." My cousin laughed and teased, "She's prettier than your secretary," then gave Anna a secret thumbs up and whispered, "Go get him." Encouraged, Anna beamed and proudly handed me the breakfast she'd prepared. However, the next second, before she could hand it to me, another tall figure stepped in beside me. She stood between us and offered me a lunchbox. Her hands were soft as catkins, her skin as pale as cream. She pulled a wet wipe from her bag and gently cleaned my hands. In a low voice, she said, "The car's ready, boss." Victoria Lee had a sweet voice, but her expression was cold. I tilted my head and saw her delicate face as she stared straight at me, blocking Anna entirely, as if she didn't even notice her. My secretary was getting more and more possessive. I got into the car without a word. A lot had changed in China. The first thing I did was visit my parents' grave. When I got there, a bunch of dried white chrysanthemums rustled in the wind before their tombstone someone must have visited recently. I moved them aside and placed my own bouquet. I told my parents about my life abroad, about how my uncle took good care of me, how my aunt could cook anything except desserts, which were far too sweet, and how my cousin and his wife were laughably clumsy with their newborn. As for me, things were good. I had family, I had support, I had built a career from scratch and made business friends who actually respected me. I told them not to worry, I was taking care of myself. Rain started to fall, and I could taste the salt as it slid into my mouth. After paying respects, we left the cemetery. My cousin held an umbrella for Anna, and Victoria Lee walked beside me. As we passed another couple, I overheard an irritated voice, "Even if you come here every day, you won't see James Carter. You're pregnant with our child, can't you think about how I feel?" That voice, familiar yet distant, made me instinctively turn. It was Michael Evans and Lily Wilson. Of course it was. Hearing my name, my cousin, Anna, and the others looked over, but I shook my head, signaling not to intervene. Michael kept ranting. Lily suddenly spun around, snatched his umbrella, and threw it to the ground. "Can you shut up for once? You're so annoying." Michael stomped the umbrella in frustration, and it looked like they were about to argue loudly in front of my parents' graves. I quickly asked the cemetery staff to deal with them. I didn't show myself because I didn't come back for Lily Wilson. I came to explore business opportunities in real estate. I had no intention of letting bad luck stick to me. Unfortunately, when I went to inspect my family's old house, I ran into an old family friend who knew both my parents and the Wilsons. He was thrilled and immediately called Lily's mother to tell her I was back. She sounded overly excited on the phone and said, "Why didn't you tell Auntie you were coming home? I've been so worried about you. Wait there, I'll come pick you up." I replied, "No, Auntie, I have things to do." Then I hung up and returned the phone to the elder. By the time Lily and her mother arrived, we were already in the car on the way to the hotel. That evening, we were attending a banquet to network with real estate developers in Weicheng. It was a grand event. Our group was already used to banquets from our time in Country F, so adapting here was easy. I had solid conversations with several business leaders, not just because I had ideas worth listening to, but also because many of them had some past acquaintance with my parents. With my resources and connections, things went smoothly. Midway through the banquet, there was a commotion at the entrance. Mr. Thompson, our host, frowned and asked what was going on. A staff member said, "Boss Lily insisted on entering without an invitation." Mr. Thompson glanced at Mayhay, knew I had been adopted by the Wilsons, and smiled. It must be our oversight. The invitation for Boss Lily must have been lost. Let her in. I remained indifferent but found it amusing. Forgot to send her an invitation. In other words, no one saw the Wilsons as important anymore. Without my past support, their little company was nearing bankruptcy, especially with all the recent policy changes. Who cared about them now? I didn't stop Thompson. Outsiders didn't know the full history between me and the Wilson family. If I refused her entry, it could look petty, like I was ungrateful. So I maintained my composure. Lily Wilson's eyes locked onto me instantly. She wore a half-on haute couture dress, now wrinkled from the pushing and shoving at the entrance. She didn't even fix it, just rushed straight at me. "James Carter, you're finally back." Her eyes sparkled with desperation, as if some long-dead light had been reignited. I didn't move. Before she could get close, 3 people stepped in front of me. My cousin frowned. "Who are you?" Anna crossed her arms. "Why is there always another one?" Victoria Lee, sipping water, cleared her throat and looked ready to go off. I was speechless. We were here for business, not drama. Lily's eyes reddened. "James Carter, why?" I didn't want to indulge her sentimentality. I said, "Long time no see. I have things to do. Please help yourself." Right behind her, Lily's mother appeared, pushing through the crowd with a smug smile. She clutched my arm and said, "James Carter, my boy, why did you leave without saying a word? Where have you been all these years?" She clung to me and began dabbing tears with her handkerchief. I coldly pushed her hand away. "Auntie, you received every letter my uncle sent. Why didn't you tell me? And I left a note when I left." That was all I had to say. Everyone in the room was smart enough to connect the dots. It was obvious Lily's mother had hidden my uncle's letters to keep me from finding my real family, not out of love, but to keep control of the assets in my name. I didn't need to spell it out. Everyone understood. Lily's mother stopped crying instantly and forced a dry laugh. "James Carter, don't be angry, how would I know if it was a lie? Besides, Lily Wilson looked for you for a long time after you left." Those were her words, right before she dragged Lily Wilson over to my side. Lily didn't say anything, she just stared at me with red, swollen eyes. That look made me uncomfortable. I frowned. Victoria Lee stepped forward and said coldly, "Please keep a distance from my husband." I nearly choked. Anna let out a mocking laugh and added, "You'd better give up on trying to chase a man who's way out of your league." Lily didn't even glance at either of them. She just kept looking at me and asked, "Why did you leave? Do you know how long I've been looking for you?" I shook my head and replied, "I don't know. I don't care. I'm not interested. I don't want to know." Her breath hitched, and she pulled a bracelet from her pocket. "I had it fixed," she said. "I went to find you that day because I wanted to make peace with you." Her voice trembled. "James Carter, I'll never be stupid again." Her sincerity was obvious, her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Anna glanced at the bracelet and covered her mouth with a smirk. "Girl, what is this, middle school? That cheap little thing is so childish." Lily looked at me with heartbreak in her gaze and whispered, "You can ask me to do anything, just please don't ignore me." A gift's value never mattered to me, and whether I liked it or not didn't either. Back when she gave me her favorite doll, I was genuinely happy because it was from someone I liked. But now, I couldn't even muster the energy to feel disgust toward her. She was too weak. Stripped of the blind emotions I had in my past life, she wasn't even worthy of being an opponent. I replied, "I do admire your rebellious streak. The way you think you can control method's pretty entertaining." She choked up and said, "James Carter, those were just words said in anger." I thought. I waved her off. "It doesn't matter." I picked up a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and added indifferently, "Does your husband know you're here to see me? Don't waste my time, I am here for business." Her lips quivered as though I'd struck her. In my past life, if I wanted to speak to her for just one more second, she'd say I was disturbing her. She was always busy getting her hair done, shopping, baking, but in truth, she was busy spending every night in bed with Michael Evans, building a family and raising his child. As I turned to leave, Lily Wilson panicked and said, "Please don't go. Can we start over?" Before I could even respond, my cousin cut in, "Where does a married woman get the nerve to chase my brother?" This time, all color drained from Lily's face. Her voice trembled. "I didn't hide my marriage on purpose, James Carter. I just wanted to win you back. Don't be angry, my relationship with Michael Evans was a mistake. He drugged me. I was tricked. For all these years, I've stayed faithful to you. Wait and insult the word faithful, okay? What would I be angry about?" In the end, Thompson had both Lily and her mother escorted out. After the banquet, Lily was still waiting outside. I didn't expect Michael Evans to show up and immediately punch and kick her, shouting, "You're pregnant with my child and still chasing after other men. Are you out of your mind?" Lily, already unstable, lashed out and told him to get lost. They argued until he finally snapped and punched her hard, sending her to the ground. Blood poured from between her legs. I averted my eyes and got in the car. Even as the bleeding continued, Lily wailed my name behind the car, screaming for me. My cousin muttered, "She's seriously obsessed, a scumbag." I corrected him, "She's not obsessed. She's just using our past to manipulate me into helping the Wilson family. Women like her only love themselves." The partnership turned out to be a success. I invested alongside Mr. Thompson and several others to build the largest new shopping mall in the Acropolis. Due to the scale of the project, I planned to stay in China for a while. Anna returned to country F first, but before she left, she wouldn't stop nagging me. "There's a saying in China, good horse doesn't turn back. Don't you dare get back with that woman. Also, your secretary isn't much better, her voice is so fake, total green tea energy." Right then, Victoria Lee appeared silently and said, "Boss, I can do the queen voice too." I rolled my eyes. "At the moment, I just want to make money. If either of you delays that, I'll fire you both." Anna gave Victoria a death stare, stormed onto the plane, and left. Victoria pulled down her collar ever so slightly, as if to expose more cleavage. I was speechless. After Lily's miscarriage, she tried to come see me a few more times, but as her life spiraled out of control, she gave up. The E family, furious that she had cheated while pregnant and brought shame to them, traveled to the Acropolis demanding an explanation from the Wilsons. The Wilson company was already struggling. After interference from Michael Evans's relatives, it went bankrupt. A high-powered lawyer helped Michael file for divorce, and he walked away with most of what little was left. Lily's father, overwhelmed with debt and disgrace, hanged himself at the ruins of the old office building. Her mother lost her mind and wandered around the house talking to the air, babbling to her imaginary son-in-law. "She's your wife. Isn't it natural to spend money on her? Lily is marrying beneath herself to take an orphan like you. Isn't it only fair for you to bleed a little?" One day she ran out into traffic during a fit and was hit by a car, leaving her paralyzed. Lily asked Michael for money to pay her mother's medical bills, but most of his funds were already stolen by greedy relatives. He wouldn't help even if he coulda hated the Wilsons. The argument started again. This time, Lily blamed all her suffering on him. Michael didn't hold back. He beat her until her head split open. But what no one saw coming was the knife Lily brought with her. In the next second, she used it and Michael Evans died on the spot. Lily Wilson was quickly arrested. And I, ever so kind, went to the hospital to visit her mother and even paid for her medical expenses. Everyone praised me for being loyal and generous, but what they didn't know was that I had hired the worst caregiver possible. Before long, she was covered in bedsores, the stench of decay clinging to her like karma itself. I stood beside her bed, smiled, and said, "Auntie, do you remember the past life? When you were torturing me, did it ever occur to you that one day you'd be lying helpless in front of me? You knew Lily Wilson had someone else, yet you gaslight me, made me think I was the problem. While I was starving, taking medicine, bowing to statues, your whole family was basking in happiness. Now, it's your turn to feel the pain I lived with. Lily's mother widened her eyes and waved her arms, but she couldn't even touch the hem of my sleeve. All she could do was drool and blink in despair. I wouldn't let her die, I'd keep her alive like this. That was mercy enough. Before Lily Wilson's execution, she asked to see me. I agreed. When we met, she cried and poured her heart out. She said strange memories had emerged, memories that didn't belong to her. She saw the version of her past life where her coldness condemned me to a life of utter loneliness. She begged, "Can you forgive me? I love you." I didn't want to face my feelings because I was trying to break free from my parents' control. I've always listened to them, but when they told me to love you, I rebelled. I thought going against them was freedom. I was so childish. And now, I've lost everything. She sobbed, broken. I just shook my head. She laughed bitterly. It's okay if you hate me. I deserve it. This is my retribution. That was when I laughed. Finally, it was my turn. I said, "Retribution? Do you really think it's just coincidence?" My smirk was reflected in a glass window beside us. You thought your company's collapse was caused by bad market conditions. You thought Michael Evans was just lucky to book that banquet venue. You thought your miscarriage was an accident. You thought those poor relatives just happened to find a top-tier legal team for him. Her face lost all color, going paler by the second. Her eyes, bloodshot and trembling, locked onto mine. You hate me that much, she whispered. Why shouldn't I? In my past life, I didn't commit a single sin against heaven or earth, yet I ended up living like a ghost. All because the Wilson family saw my fortune as something they were entitled to. They wrecked my life. And in this life, I only pulled a few strings that was already me being merciful. Every misstep they took, every collapse, was a choice they made. I stood up, looked down at her one last time, and said, "I'll personally deliver the news of your execution to your mother." Then I turned and walked out of the prison, stepping into the black car waiting for me. As it glided through the rain, I looked out the window at the rising skyline in the newly zoned commercial district. Towering steel, fresh glass, and cranes painting the future me future.